All right. So today we're going to be talking about Michigan's safe storage laws, and we have with us our attorney Ryan. And Ryan, why don't you go ahead and tell us a little bit about yourself?
Well, thanks, Dave. Good morning. Good to see you. My name is Ryan Ramsayer. I'm an attorney here in the state of Michigan. I work at the Broad Defense Firm where I've been for the last 15 years. I'm a 2A defender. As a young man, I was in the Marine Corps infantry, 351. Somebody who's very passionate about firearms and about our rights to them. And one of the things I like to do is go around the state and teach people about firearms laws, specifically so they can keep themselves out of trouble and so they don't jeopardize our rights for those who want to make sure that we are law-abiding citizens.
Cool, man. And I like those law seminars that we do. We're going to have to get some of those on the books, especially I don't know if you just recently I seen it this morning. It was one of the first things I looked up. They had the Senate bill 857 and 858, I believe. They got shot down yesterday.
I unfortunately haven't had a chance. I've been very busy with court this morning and yesterday, but I will be reviewing everything that goes on because I think it's very important to maintain an awareness of what is out there and what is approaching.
Yeah, I got like short notice of it. I didn't know that it was even going, and then I seen I believe it was like Great Lakes Gun Rights or whatever. They put something out and I was like, what is this? And I barely had time to read the any of it, but so I do thank you for standing up for our rights and teaching us how to fight against that stuff. So with this law, one of the things, Ryan, do you ever see laws change? Is there a way that once a law is set that it can be reversed?
So absolutely. Let's talk a little bit about how laws work. So laws are usually written by idiots, and then they're sent to a group of idiots, usually called a committee, and that group of idiots then changes the words that the original person who didn't write down exactly what they meant in a hyper-specific way, they'll change the words, and that changes the meaning. So what ends up happening a lot of times is that something that was not as concise as it should have been gets mangled by a bunch of people. Then they're going to try and they have both the House and the Senate. They try and mesh these bills together, which means that they even get rewritten again before they're finally signed off of and then reviewed. And so there's many points in which language changes. And it's always possible to modify a law, especially because oftentimes when laws are passed, they have unintended consequences because of the way that the language is written or poorly written. Sometimes the law won't say what it thinks it means. Sometimes it will have to be revised in order to be more effective. Sometimes we'll find out later that things like different case law has come down dealing with this law and it has to be amended in order for it to remain effective. So it's absolutely imperative if you do not like any of the laws that we have in the state of Michigan, you call up your local representatives in the state and hassle them. And although calling maybe a senator nationally is not going to get you the attention you want, the state senators and state representatives, they have a lot less going on. And the louder that you squeak, the more they're going to try and oil your concerns. And that's absolutely true. And I've seen it happen before where, especially if you have reasonable requests, people are able to actually get the laws changed.
Nice. I like how you said idiots because I made a part one of this where I took two situations, and one was in Grand Rapids, one was in Detroit, where actually children shot themselves with the parent's firearm. And I download the actual legal document and I attach it to my website. Well, in this video, I did this, and I had to tell the viewers that I didn't edit this or anything like that. And you can see all the errors and the actual like all words that ran together. And so I was like, well, this is our tax-paying dollars at work. You know what I mean? So yeah. Anyway, so let's talk. What, go ahead.
I said, absolutely.
Yeah. Let's go ahead and talk about this safe storage law because a lot of people, some people think this was just designed for the concealed carry holder, but this was actually designed for um, all gun owners in the state of Michigan. But we just talk about it in the concealed carry class because now it's a part of um, the CPL laws, right?
Right.
So what exactly is this safe storage law? What do people need to know about this law?
Well, I mean, the specifics of it, and we might as well just call it what it is. It's the Crumbly Law. It is based on that case in Oxford, wherein differing versions of events, but the parents essentially gave access to a pistol to their son, who ended up using that pistol to commit a school shooting, a heinous, atrocious action. There is
Yeah.
actual question whether or not he actually had access to the pistol, whether the pistol was locked up, but the case was brought against the parents in order to try and punish them. And look, at the end of the day, with school shootings, the problem has been as long as guns remain out there and children have access to them, there could be school shootings. It's a right that we have to have firearms, but half of the country at least would limit, if not totally eliminate that right in the name of safety. What they don't recognize is that if you get rid of your guns, there's a much bigger group of people that have guns, and once those people give up their guns, then all of a sudden the only people with guns are the government, and everything they say goes, whether you like it or not.
Right.
The problem becomes they wanted to pass a law because it was in the news in order to punish legal gun owners who simply had access to firearms that children could get a hold of. Look, it makes sense to people who maybe don't have a lot of understanding of firearms that you'd want to have your firearms locked up and safely secured away from children. That's one way to keep children from harming themselves. On the other hand, there's another way, and we call that parenting. And parenting involves having a child who is yours or someone else's and explaining to them not only the consequences of their actions, but also teaching them responsibility to, I don't know, have some sort of control over themselves to where they're not needlessly playing with firearms, they're not putting the society in risk, and they're not committing school shootings. But the
Right.
problem is this law doesn't deter that. It's just a convenience politically in order to say, oh, look, we did something. And this law will be used against people who allow their children access to firearms and those children go on to hurt or kill someone else. But by and large, it's not going to affect very much. It's just look at me, give me brownie points. I tried to do something. Look how good a person I am. So that's where this law comes from. It's the Crumbly case. There's no doubt about that. As to what this law actually is, it basically says that if, and this is loosely based, but if you have a firearm and you know or reasonably should know that a minor would have access to it. Now, that's whether it's on your property, and let's say you have kids or if grandkids come over on a regular basis, or if the wife runs a daycare in your house, if there's ever a point at which you reasonably should foresee minors having access to your premises, then you need to take the additional step now of making sure that firearms are locked up and inaccessible to them. It also applies if you're, in this case, Dave, a CPL holder, and you go to some place where you know that your vehicle, like let's say you're leaving your firearm in your vehicle, you also would know if that person has minors who could possibly have access to the motor vehicle, or let's say you're parking at a school or something like that. So you have, as long as you have an understanding that minors are likely to be present, then you have this additional obligation to ensure that they don't have access to your firearms.
Okay. All right. And
So,
that's
go
go
ahead.
ahead. And that's kind of like some of these things in here, like as I was reading it, um, one of the things it talks about is, a minor's employment. He's able to obtain a firearm if it's for employment. And for the life of me, I can't think of what that would be. Um, so if we're supposed to have our guns locked up now, as far as like home defense goes, the question I get is, well, what if I make my minor, say I have a 15-year-old at home, I'm a CPL holder, but when I get home at the end of the day, I leave my gun out, but my 15-year-old is an authorized user of my firearm. Now, let's just say hypothetically a situation similar to that shows up and the minor child grabs a hold of the gun to defend the home, is this going to end up one of those cases where the gun was not locked up, but an authorized user used the weapon to protect themselves in self-defense? Is it one of those things where like, well, they broke the law, but yet they were within the law because it was a non-authorized or an authorized user?
Okay, well, let's look at the law this way, and I think that this might hopefully give some insight as to what the law is and what the law is not. All right. I've heard tell now, again, I get a lot of calls from people who are always questioning, and always good to question before something happens, the possibility that there was going to be a budgetary allowance to teach children basically to rat on their parents who did not follow the safe storage law. Okay.
Yeah,
Again, whether that's true or not, that's been rumored. Here is what the law is not. It is not illegal for you as a homeowner, as a firearms owner. It is not illegal to leave your firearm unsecured. It is not illegal to, on your own premises, do pretty much whatever the heck you want with that firearm. What becomes illegal is if a minor gets access to the firearm. And if that minor then displays the firearm in a reckless manner, essentially, if they go out bragging or try and threaten somebody, or fires that firearm, either seriously injuring or killing somebody, then the law actually applies. So it's called the Safe Storage Act, but really what it is it's illegal only once a minor has gotten access to it, and then either uh, possess or exhibit the firearm in a public place, or possess or exhibit the firearm in the presence of another person in a careless, reckless, or threatening manner, or if somebody ends up getting injured or killed because of that firearm being in the presence of that minor. It is not illegal to leave your firearm unlocked or unsecured. Okay. So there is a certain amount of risk that you take when you have children, that if you don't lock up your firearm and they have access to it, if they were to display it or possess it in a threatening or reckless manner, you could be charged with a misdemeanor. If they hurt or kill somebody, you could be charged with a felony and potentially go to prison. At the end of the day, though, you also still, as a parent, have the ability uh, to allow your minor, that if you've given them permission or possess the firearm while the minor is under the supervision of the minor's parent, guardian, or any individual who's 18 years of age or older and authorized by the parents, that they're using either the firearm to do some kind of employment for the minor, ranching or farming, target practice, then those are all covered. Okay. So it's
yeah,
important to understand that there are exceptions if you give permission. There's also the exception that a minor who obtains the firearm with permission of the parent or guardian and uses the firearm for hunting, if they're in compliance with hunting laws, that's acceptable. And that a minor who obtains a firearm while lawfully acting in self-defense or defense of another, and that one doesn't have uh, the requirements that he or she, the minor, have permission, only that they're acting in lawful self-defense. So if you leave your firearms unlocked and your child uses it for self-defense, then that can be okay. The problem becomes, and this is the real issue, is what is the police called to? What scene are they called to that this minor has used a firearm? Right? Because there's always
right.
two sides to a story. The minor may claim that they lawfully obtained the pistol or rifle and or shotgun and used it in defense of themselves or others at your house. If there's somebody laying there shot, they can always claim that there was no activity that required them to be shot, and thus it wasn't a lawful defense. And you can still have people charged in a he said, she said kind of situation. Now, it's important to understand too that there is an exemption for minors who unlawfully enter any premises or motor vehicle and obtain a firearm, right? So if somebody breaks into your truck or breaks into your home and takes your firearm and they're a minor, then you're not liable. But if a child, and this is important, if a child gets into your truck and you have your pistol sitting there, even if you only locked the door, that's insufficient. You have to lock up the pistol in a case or with a trigger lock and lock the door to your vehicle if you go somewhere where you know children might be present. So there's a lot of uncertainty as to how this law actually would play out in real life because if a child who has access to a motor vehicle gets that pistol and then either displays it recklessly or shoots or kills somebody and it's not a lawful self-defense, then you can be in trouble. But if it is a lawful self-defense, then you can you should be exempt from this law because again, it's not illegal that you leave your firearm unlocked or unsecured, only that the pistol was used or the firearm was used in either a reckless or threatening manner, right, to another person, or that somebody got shot or killed. So it's a little more complex than just if you don't lock up your pistol, you can go to jail.
Okay. Gives a lot of insight to that. And you do a really good job at explaining like the different sides because most people as we talk about this and read it and present it, most people combined it to just just in the home, just not having your guns locked up. And so, and that's kind of a conversation we get into also is, well, how does this apply to the castle doctrine in home defense if, we have to shoot the bad guy at the middle of the night? You know what I mean? It is it really beneficial to lock a gun up and then take 2 or 3 minutes under stress to try to find the key and or put in the code or whatever it may be, and then what kind of damages legally am I going to face if I don't lock up my gun and say whatever gang just breaks in my door and I shoot them. And so that paints a different picture the way that you're presenting this, and I like that because I've often wondered the same thing too. Like, what happens if I don't lock up my guns and the bad guy comes through and it's 2 o'clock in the morning, or even when I'm away and I give my boys the rights to utilize my firearms if they have to, and they're trained, we train, um, and so I think it's very important that people understand this law. So there was
But
another.
let me expound on that just a little bit, Dave, if I can, because it's also important to understand. Look, again, the law came from the Crumblies, right? So in Michigan, it's been shown that you can still be prosecuted even without this law. If your kid
Mhm.
gets access to a firearm and commits some atrocious act, right? So there's always been a risk for that, and the Crumblies, unfortunately, are in prison today for that act, right?
Right,
This makes it a strict liability act. This says it doesn't matter if you know that the kid was going to do something crazy like shoot up a school, which, by the way, the specific facts of the Crumbly case point out that a doctor of psychology couldn't figure out that within an hour that kid was going to shoot his classmates. I'm just saying that if the doctor of psychology who's trained to deal with children doesn't know that a kid is about to go shoot up a classroom, then maybe parents who don't have some magical degree from multiple years of college might not also be able to tell whether or not that child is going to be crazy and do crazy things. All right.
right,
But really, what's important in this is you don't even need to know that your child is going to do something crazy. It's simply if your child does something crazy and you knew they had access to a firearm, you're now strictly liable for that. Okay, so it
right,
does increase the legal burden on you and make it much easier for the state to try and prove, even if you were the best of parents and you had the best of intentions and you let your child have access and training with firearms. If your child then turns around and uses that firearm and all of a sudden it's claimed, even if they think it was self-defense, but it's proven that it's not self-defense or it was incorrectly self-defense, now you could be strictly liable for the use of that firearm. And so it is a cooling of your rights because now you're going to take that extra step and go, well, do I, before I didn't really trust my kids, but I told them not to use my firearms. Now, not only can I not trust them, but now I have to lock them up because I can't trust them so much that they should even have access to firearms, which, by the way, is clearly a disservice to children because if you tell them you should never be around firearms, you should be scared of firearms, they're never going to appreciate firearms. They're never going to understand how to use firearms, the rights that they have to those firearms, or why they would want those firearms. They're simply going to be scared of them as instruments of death and destruction. And then they're going to easily give up their rights to those firearms because they don't appreciate why we have those rights or what those tools are actually meant to do.
Right. That's a good point. Very good point. I had another question
Sure.
and I forgot what it was. Ah, man. Okay. Here it is right here. So in the law, the way the law reads, right? And I know
Yes.
there's a lot of confusion on this. I am under the impression, based on what the law says, let's talk about like um the locking devices when we buy guns now. So the way that I interpreted the law is that we have to buy a separate locking device, whether it's a trigger lock, um a safe of some kind. It has to be a secondary lock outside of the one that's federally mandated. Am I reading that wrong?
Yes, it just so a locking device under the law is a trigger lock, cable lock, or similar lock that prevents the firearm from discharging. So, as you know, they come with the gun, right?
Right.
Um, if you're not buying in a individual sale, you're getting one of these already with the firearm. But it can also include a locked box or container. Those have to be specifically designed for the storage of firearms, fully enclosed and locked by either a padlock, key lock, combination lock, or similar locking device which the minor does not possess the key combination or otherwise have access. So any kind of actual pistol or rifle case or shotgun case or trigger lock or cable lock that's going to prevent the firearm from being discharged. Any of those are fine. Remembering, though, that even if you have them locked in such a manner, when you pull up in your truck to somebody who may have kids on the premise, or you have kids on the premise, you also have to lock the truck. So it's
Okay.
two steps. It's not just the firearm with a locking device. It's also locking the vehicle as well. Does
Okay.
that make sense? So that's
Yeah.
that's what's required. But again, it's not illegal to not do that. It's only illegal once a minor has obtained the firearm and used it for one of the bad things that are listed under the law, either shooting or killing somebody or displaying it in a reckless manner or exhibiting it in a public place.
Okay. So I was totally reading this wrong because I was like, there's no way that they want us to buy an actual safe per purchase.
No.
And that's the way and I was like, that's kind of ridiculous. Especially if you're, buying guns, monthly or whatever. But um, so now here's the debate, Ryan, because I'm out of questions unless there's anything you want to add or say about the safe storage laws. Um, I'm
Well,
kind
again,
of
my addition would always be that I think it's an unnecessary and stupid law, right? And the reason I do this is that I've solved all school shootings. In fact, I've solved all gun crimes. Um, and I tell people all the time, putting laws on the books to get rid of gun crimes is unnecessary if we just make murder illegal. Because if we made murder illegal, and I like not just a ticket, like an actual crime, then people, because it's illegal, wouldn't murder other people. So as long as we make murder illegal, we don't have to have any of these other laws on the books because since murder is illegal, they wouldn't commit murder, just like storing firearms improperly is illegal. Of course, that's just redundant. Why have a redundant law if we already made murder illegal? So we should probably go ahead and make murder illegal. These are idiotic laws designed by people who don't like firearms, who don't appreciate firearms, and have taken personal responsibility away from parents and teens and other individuals to raise children in an environment in which they respect, they are properly trained in, and know how to use firearms, right? That they use them safely and diligently. And that's really what we should be spending our time, effort, and energy on. We should cancel all of this crap out where we just simply make up extra laws to make ourselves feel like we get goody points because now it's a strict liability if a child gets a hold of a gun. And instead, maybe we should focus on raising better children. Maybe
Yeah.
we should focus on better parenting, on having schools that in the old days used to teach gun and firearm safety. We should bring that back and actually teach children the effective and safe use of their rights instead of teaching children to hate firearms and to rely on a government to save them from the bad, bad bang bangs. Instead, we should actually maybe parent our children. And I know it's tough out there. I've got kids. I hate them half the time, but I still love them the other half, and it's tough to parent them every day. But one of the things that we have to do as a nation, especially of conservatives who enjoy our firearms rights, we're going to have to step it up just a little bit and take that responsibility to parent our children better. But yeah,
Yeah.
personally, I would get rid of this. I would move to a constitutional carry in this state, all things that can be appropriate. I would also change a lot of our firearms laws when it comes to stand your ground to make it so that that way we could get rid of things like unnecessary charges in a clear-cut self-defense case. But until people actually unite, start calling and hassling their local state representatives, they're not going to get any changes. Instead, we're going to get more changes this direction that restrict and limit our rights, or at least put a fear of us exercising our rights appropriately to the point where it diminishes our rights. And so that's why I don't like this law. I would get rid of this law. But do I think that this is the worst law in the books? No, absolutely not. I think it's unnecessary as long as you do the one thing, and that's make murder illegal, which I strongly suggest we do if we haven't already.
Yeah. I agree. And when we do our active shooter courses, we talk about the bell tower shooter. Are you familiar with the bell tower shooter?
Oh, you tied from Texas?
Yeah.
Yeah, back in what was his name? Whitlock,
Yeah. So
former
the
Marine,
yeah,
son of five
the
Marines.
yep. And one of the things that's interesting about that whole case is the gun that was used was actually brought to a sheriff from a 13-year-old boy who lived like, I don't know, a block or so away. And so he brought the shotgun to the officer, and that's the thing that saved the day was that shotgun. And so people are always like, oh, well, kids shouldn't have guns. And when you talked about kids in school having guns, man, I mean, and that wasn't that long ago. We're not talking 100 years. You know, but it was a 13-year-old boy that
Right,
brought a 12 gauge shotgun. And, to see our society now where all these kids are afraid of guns, but yet we have all these 16 and 17-year-olds and even 13-year-olds out on the street with stolen guns. We're still afraid to teach our kids about firearm safety, about laws, about protection, and about guns. And they have no respect for guns. They have no fear over them, and man, it's just sickening. So I agree with you 100%. I think this law here, to be 100% honest, is like one of those bullshit laws. Um, it shouldn't even be it shouldn't even be a law.
no,
But
absolutely. I would agree with that. And if we can get even a few people to spend the time to make a phone call to their local representative, maybe we can get this retracted.
yeah, yeah, that would be great. So here's another question I've got for you. There's this big debate going around online, and I get asked all the time too in our concealed carry classes, should when I carry, should I carry with one in the chamber or not? And I really, to me, it's just a matter of preference, right? But the question happens or has been asked, well, what happens if the gun gets discharged or you have to draw it on somebody? What are there legal consequences for carrying one in the chamber or not? Could the defense say, well, you were expecting or anticipating or you were ready for the gunfight?
Well, I mean, look, at the end of the day, a good defense attorney could sell snow to an Eskimo, right? Like a six of one, half a dozen of the other. Like I'll flip around, like what was the good coach saying for football, right? He can beat you with his and then turn around and beat you with yours, right? So, look, I can play both sides against the middle, and they don't even have to be logically consistent, which is nice. But the truth of the matter is, if you're carrying a firearm or any weapon, and by the way, Michigan is very bad about any other weapons than firearms for self-defense. But let's say you're carrying your CPL, your pistol. So you're carrying a pistol already on you. You already believe that there's a reason you might need that, right? If you didn't
Right.
believe that, why would you have taken the time to go get an entire class, a very well put on class, I'm sure, Dave, but an entire class, and then you got to go and get your fingerprints submitted and wait by the mailbox for the Ovaltine secret ring decoder saying that now you can hide your pistol on your body somehow, right? Why would you spend all that time if you didn't think you were going to need it? So at the end of the day, no, there's no difference between carrying a gun that has bullets in it and one in the chamber, except for tactically, in order to chamber around, it takes just that extra heartbeat. You should, if you're going to carry a weapon, you should carry it safely, right? Now, being somebody who, look, I witnessed special forces give the old, this is my safety crap. That's that's exactly the reason that I also heard accidental discharges every now and then as they bumped or jostled the trigger and fired off a round, right? Maybe we didn't report that so much, but at the same time, that's a dangerous way to carry on your life. You want to have a safety engaged, but having one in the chamber is absolutely appropriate because, yes, the reason you're carrying the pistol in the first place is because you anticipate trouble, right? The best way I explain now to people about firearms is look, you don't have to do all of the policing yourself, right? Instead, it's like a firefighter or a fire truck shows up, right? That's what the police are. You still own a fire extinguisher at home because you know the fire truck might not get there in time. And if you can take care of the situation with that fire extinguisher, or you can solve the situation with your concealed pistol, then that's what you've got to do. And later,
Right.
yes, the cops can come and they can take care of the rest. But if you have the ability to take that shot and it saves a life, whether it's yours or another person, then that's exactly what you're carrying the pistol for in the first place. You might as well have one chamber. Again, with the safety on, and you should do training so as that you can remove that safety while you're drawing and be ready to go the second that you have eyes on target, right? That's
Right.
exactly how you want to do it. But that's going to require training. That's why you want to find and you want to train on a regular basis. One of the things that you talked about in the past a little bit, Dave, but the Second Amendment does have a militia provision. People forget that in the old days, on Sundays, usually after church and before the picnic and the hangings, there was a period in which young men oftentimes from teenagers on, did firearm training as a group. They did militia training so that they were familiar with not only the weapons that they were carrying, but also how to fight as a unit to protect their small town, their outpost on the frontier, right? So they were doing training on a regular basis, even the young men. Even though the young men had probably by that time already been hunting since the age of, 3 to 5 in many families, so they already had some idea how to use firearms and the safety and the necessity of these firearms. But this is something that, yes, you want to do training. We want to be safe out there. We don't want negligent discharges. And yes, those are serious crimes that I have seen people get in a lot of trouble over. But at the same time, there's nothing dangerous about carrying one in the chamber if you have an actual safety that actually works, have a firearm that's up to standard. And if you don't trust your firearm, get a better firearm.
Right. Glock. No, I like them all, but I am a Glock guy. All right, that kind of that squares things up, because there was this debate for a while, and people always ask me, if I chamber around, and I'm like, well, I train, but I carry appendix and I carry a Glock, and so, but they're always that's probably the most largest question I get in our concealed carry classes is what is the legal consequences for uh, carrying one chambered or not? And to me, I mean, you got just that split second to save your life. And if you don't know how to chamber the round in the moment, um, you're pretty much toast. So um, I'm kind of a be ready kind of guy, but I train with my weapon on a regular basis so that you know if I ever have to use it, I'm quick on it.
Absolutely, absolutely. And that's what I would suggest to everybody is that you make sure you train on the weapons that you're going to use to defend yourself because that's not the time to be figuring it out.
Right. Yep, exactly. Well, cool, man. Uh, I really appreciate you doing this for me. We're gonna have to get you in here in the very near future, for another legal seminar.
Absolutely. I enjoy doing them. So, yeah, just hit me up. We'll come out there. We'll teach people the law and make sure that they avoid putting themselves in situations where they get thrown in the back of a cop car and going, man, I should have thought about this in advance.
Right, right. And I'm trying to hold some seminars all over the state. So, you might find me up around your neck of the woods or maybe in the northern parts or, you know, but we definitely need to get you back around Lansing here in the very near future and maybe do some other podcast stuff if we end up with a lot of questions on things. But um, we'll try to wait till after the holidays to get something scheduled.
Absolutely. Just give me a call.
All right, man. Well, thank you very much, and thank you for serving our country, Ryan. I appreciate the time and you serving. We'll catch up with you soon, man.
Absolutely. Have a wonderful day and stay safe out there.
You too. Thanks.
Yep. Bye.
Bye.